About 30 light-years away from the Soothsayer homeworld, two spacecraft approached the outermost borders of the Empire. Behind them lay a vast swath of space controlled by the Nagyari Khanate. A disabled Nagyari starbase vented smoke and flame into the cold darkness of the void. One of the pair was a client fulfillment center, a battleship-sized vessel MSI used to project both economic and military power. The other vessel was a high-capacity passenger ship, capable of transporting 250,000 people between star systems. The two ships flew in very close formation, separated by only a few dozen meters. Just before they crossed the Soothsayer border, the MSI warship powered down its engines and turned back. The passenger liner continued alone. Chapter 21. Trig's Prophecy. Trig and Manius placed their hands on the shrine. 2 sticks of incense burned gently in the low light, and as the smoke wafted in front of his face, Trig could have sworn he saw strange shapes and shadows dancing in the air in front of him, giving visual form to the prophecy Manius delivered. To understand your future, you must understand your past. You are Trig Shepminter, son of Malum Ralpakin and Kara Charnham. Born in the necropolis, then raised on Edelton by benevolent members of the same race that oppresses your own. Your father fell in the battle at Lightwater. Your mother supported the Emperor when he rose to power and was imprisoned for her role in the coup. How do you know all of that? Trig asked. The universe is vast and full of wonders. There are many worlds, realities, truths of existence, above and below the one we inhabit. Space and time do not always translate perfectly from one to the other, Manius said. But above us, there are 3 places that I know of: the realm of the gods, the dream world, and the domain above the gods. Your destiny, Trig Shepminter, involves all 3. Listen well. With a flourish, Manius waved his hand across the incense atop the shrine. Now Trig could see colors and shapes taking form in front of him. He was not sure if they were holograms or appearing by some other means. Your prophecy, like all others, comes in 3 parts. This is the first. The silhouette of a boy appeared in the darkness, surrounded by 6 glittering gemstones. You will seek out and attempt to take for yourself the 6 keystone fragments. You mean this? Trig asked, holding out the keystone shard attached to his necklace. Manius nodded. It is one of the 6, the Soothsayer replied. A long time ago, the fragments were a single crystalline reservoir of psionic power. Why was it called the keystone? Trig interrupted. A flicker of some positive emotion crossed Manius's face. For a moment, Trig wondered if the Soothsayer was happy to be asked so many questions. Young man, I cannot tell you another person's story. That you must learn on your own. Now, let me tell you the next part of your prophecy. Shadows danced above the shrine. Once your quest for the keystones is over, you will travel to the place where your life began. Bring yourself and any keystones you carry to the most sacred place in the necropolis, the holiest of holy ground. Where? Trig asked. The necropolis is a whole star system, isn't it? How will I know where to go? I am not the one to ask, Manius said. Again, I can only tell your story. Trig nodded, gripping his keystone tightly. Okay, he said. So I have to collect the other 5 keystones. Then I have to go to some sacred place at the necropolis. What's the third part? A third and final image appeared. 2 figures grappled with one another, as though fighting to the death. Meanwhile, each of the fighters cast a shadow behind him. The shadows were large, very large, so big that they dwarfed the 2 combatants. Assuming monstrous forms, the 2 shadows were also locked in fierce battle against one another. Once you have quested for the keystones and traveled to the necropolis, you will join the same battle your father started 13 years ago. Trig balked. A battle? He stammered. What? The image in front of him reshaped into a swirling purple and blue cloud. Lightning flashed within. It was a storm. What Manius said next made Trig's entire body fill with terror. The gods are under attack. The shape of a lone man appeared in the swirling storm cloud. He raised one fist as though cursing the heavens. Trig let out an awed gasp. Manius continued. Under attack from a foe who understands his place in the universe far better than the gods themselves. An enlightened opponent who once aspired to their power, but now seeks what lies beyond. The astral planes outside of Riha's reach, out of Phaeom's sight, away from Kumase's wrath, insulated from Ray's influence, and forsaken by Saida. Manius grabbed Trig by the shoulder and turned him so they were facing each other. The hologram of the galaxy swirled around the Soothsayer like a heavenly aura as he pointed at Trig, declaring, "This, Trig Shepminter, is the third and final part of your prophecy. You will step into this battle I described, join a side, and fight." For a moment, Trig could not find anything to say. Finally, he managed to stammer a single question. "How do you know all of this?" Trig whispered. Manius paused thoughtfully, then leaned to one side, pressing his weight against the shrine. "I have never been to the place above the gods," he confessed, "but I know of it. I know some of what's out there, some of the deep truth. But that is my story, not yours." Trig emerged from the divination chamber, stone-faced and tight-lipped. Kara hugged him while Panico put his hand on his shoulder. Just before she stepped into the divination chamber, Tenna turned to wave at Trig. He returned the gesture, but he did not look into her eyes. Instead, he could only look at the keystone shard on her necklace. "Will I have to take it from her?" Trig asked himself. As soon as Tenna was inside the divination chamber, Panico started to interrogate Trig. After some prodding, he divulged all 3 parts of his own prophecy to Panico and his mother. Panico frowned. "This confirms everything I feared. You and I are going to have a talk, Trig, but first I need to make some calls. As soon as that girl gets back, we have to start moving." Panico stepped away, moving back into the megachurch lobby. Trig looked at his mother. "Can you tell me anything about the keystones?" he begged. "Anything at all?" Kara shook her head, grimacing. "I know there's something I remember, but it's like my brain just isn't working straight. I'm sorry." Trig and Kara sat down at a bench at the end of the hallway, silently waiting for either Tenna or Panico to return first. They sat in silence for a few minutes before a noise caught their attention. "Something's happening," Kara said. She and Trig stood up, following the sound of commotion. Stepping out of the hallway, Trig discovered that the lobby was now full of people. Nearly 200 Soothsayers and a few Olenbar were gathered at one end of the hall, watching a holographic display screen. On the display, Trig could see a live broadcast from Soothsayers State Television, a government-sanctioned news agency. The anchor person on the screen was delivering a report as Trig and Kara approached, straining their ears to listen over the noise of nervous muttering. For those of you just joining us, SKS-TV has interrupted your local broadcasting to report on an urgent development in the diplomatic crisis between the Soothsayerian Empire and our former overlords, Minimar Specialized Industries. Prime Minister Morenia Vestum has formally accused the megacorporation of providing safe harbor to the Birkin terrorist organization, styling itself as the Soothsayerian Liberation Army. This comes after the secret police presented their report on a battle between two unidentified starships near the vicinity of the prison ship Grand Historia. The countless people in the crowd chattered among one another, an atmosphere of unease in the air. The news anchor carried on. Safar Vestum, chief of the secret police, has issued an indictment against Alex Kember, a Soothsayerian man living on the Lightwater Moon, an MSI refugee world. By strange coincidence, Camber and his megachurch are involved in a manhunt of their own. Mercenaries in Camber's employ are currently combing Lightwater in search of a teenage girl named Tenna Honora, who allegedly stole a valuable relic from Mr. Camber. The MSI Board of Directors has refused to comment on this development and remains committed to ceasefire talks between itself and the Soothsayerian Empire. Trig and Kara looked away from the screen, their faces as pale as everyone around them. A moment later, Panico found them. "It's worse than I thought," Panico said. "I'll tell you everything just as soon as we get the girl. Where is she?" Trig turned and jogged back down the hallway he had just come from, Kara and Panico bringing up the rear. Just as he reached the doorway of the divination chamber, Tenna emerged. She looked very different from her usual cheery self. If anything, Trig thought that Tenna looked miserable. Tears streaked down her face, her eyes were red, and she did not return Trig's wave of greeting. "Oh my goodness, you poor girl!" Kara exclaimed. "What did that man do?" I don't want to talk about it," Tenna muttered. "What happened?" Trig asked. "Was your prophecy bad? Is something bad going to happen to you?" Tenna did not answer. The look in her eyes conveyed a sense of immense sorrow and anguish.